Welcome back, everyone, to the World's Play-ins, where our first contenders for the knockout stage will be decided as G2 and Gambit esports gear up for our first game of the day. There we see both teams, a bit of lounging, a bit of talking to the coaching staff, really lounging to Kira. You know what? You gotta be chill. Some awesome cosplay, some Alistar cosplay in the LoL arena in Seoul, in LoL Park, which is a great venue that our games are taking place in. Will be ram-packed with enthusiastic fans once again today, I am sure, and I can't wait for the games. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, joined by Jake, Spawn, Tiberi, and Mark Zimmerman. Now, we've been on the desk a couple of days, so I thought, since we both have nicknames, I want you also to have a nickname besides the Marks. Nobody else said that anyway. So how about Zims?
Good luck. I don't love that one.
I really like Zimmy. I think Zimmy is good.
Zimmy.
No nickname has ever stuck on me my entire life. So
Challenge
good luck,
accepted.
but it's gonna fall.
Challenge accepted. Although it's not about us, it is about the teams that are playing here at Worlds. And after 2 days of action, Edward Gaming, Supermassive, Cloud9, and G2 are still looking undefeated. And they are looking to secure the first seed for the knockout stage. So guys, if we look at all these standings, which 2-0 team is most likely to get that #1 seed?
I think EDG is kind of the odds-on favorite for me. I thought that they looked absolutely dominant kind of in both their games. They're I think the team that's going to hold on to their 2-0 and expand it into a 4-0.
And I think there's good arguments for the other three teams because they did get challenged at times. I think, the fact that Supermassive have G2 in their group is going to be a big deal. But then Detonation Focus Me's performance, I think, was a standout in that day #1.
Good enough to hold C9 from that first place, though.
Probably not, but I do think they were threatened at least, whereas EDG did not look threatened at all.
Yeah, that is a good point. Now, yesterday, just to recap, of course, we already mentioned Supermassive. They went 2-0, and the start of that was taking down G2 Esports from the EU LCS, and we're really looking at them to take the next step for the TCL. And MSI, they had a great group stage as well. But we're looking at them to do even more than that, going undefeated in this group stage and then possibly making a run at that best-of-5.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a way to start it off. Against G2, their bottom lane was dominant, maybe exploiting the part of the map they would be able to do so. But then the rest of the members also getting in on the action. An all-round great team performance. And GBM's impressive second game, I think, really launched them into favorites for that group for me, just because of the fact that he was the inconsistent portion at MSI.
Yeah, he's always been a hit-or-miss player, and we haven't seen anything bad out of him yet, which is why it does feel like they are such a dominant team, because they also have really good vision control and macro to back up this individual play.
Yeah, calm, cool, and collected, not anything erratic or aggressive off the bat, just really playing out the game correctly. For G2 Esports then, tomorrow, if they want to get first seed, they will have to win versus Supermassive, win versus Ascension, and possibly win versus Supermassive again. So yeah, it'll be a long road for them, but after their win over Ascension, Ovally did have a chat with G2's top laner Wunder. So let's take a look.
I'm here with G2's top laner Wunder. After the first day of play-ins, you guys ended your day 1-1. You had some really rough games. So what was really going on today?
Well, I think today we just had a lot of jitters because we were playing on the stage for the first time in a very long time since Gambit. I think we were also having some issues that we had in scrims that was really, really apparent on stage too. So I think we just had a lot of issues, and against Supermassive, they really exposed us, and our draft was also really hard to play from us. So we just messed up on a lot of things that I think we can improve on for the next time we play them. So that's basically it.
And you guys do have that 1 day of practice in between going into day 4. So what really needs to be focused and what needs to be addressed coming into that day?
Well, I think our draft mainly and our priorities, because we are scrimming against mainly the group stage teams. So the playing teams have a different way of approaching their priorities and approaching how to play the game. So I think we will learn to play against what they're bringing to the table, and we will also change up a bit of our own. So that's basically what the only thing we can really change in 2 days.
Well, Wunder, thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck in those games. And that's it for us here.
Well, he's staying realistic. He says we will need to change a couple of things, see what we can pick up. And, well, the meta is not maybe necessarily what you expected, so you have to adjust in that day off.
Yeah, and I think they will have a chance to, but they sound very aware of the fact that it wasn't an, oh, we stumbled and had a bad moment kind of thing, which is sometimes you often hear when a team does drop a game to a lower seed, but they seem very aware that it's more than that.
And I think more importantly, this paints a picture that the play-in teams are coming in and playing their own style of League of Legends, and that's something that G2 are now very aware of, and maybe will have to look to change up in their own game.
Yeah, I'm happy they're recognizing how strong Supermassive is, knowing that they'll have to go up against them once again. Now, it's very important. Every every play you make on the world stage. And some players, they want to lock in the flashy assassins or the high DPS carries. And then there are the ones who just lock in Tahm Kench just to say no, and I'm helping. Brought to you by State Farm. And as an example, in his game versus G2 Snowflower, he pulls out all the stops to make sure the gank on GBM can be turned around in Supermassive's favor.
But GBM engaged on in the mid lane. They know the ultimate's not there. Actually coming up just in time. Looks like he still will fall, but Snowflower comes in, a heroic save. Perkz wants to take him out. The dash through, not quite enough. Perkz leaps back to the snow screen.
I'm moving, Tom, moving.
Okay. 오케이 천천히 안 먹을게. 오케이 나이스. 아칼리. 오른. Can you go? Nice. Slowly.
We can get turret.
And I just don't know what you have to do to get Tahm Kench out of the meta. You know, everything has happened to this champion at the moment. One ability, the Devour, and the whole play turns on its head. I really hate Tahm Kench.
To be fair, he did also have a good exhaust as well in the Akali.
Yeah, way to underplay Snowflower.
Yeah, he was calling out the Akali, watch the Shroud. Yeah. But I agree, yeah, the Tahm Kench W is...
Snowflower, great.
Yeah.
Tahm Kench, not great. So there we go.
I do think this is very nice. Like, as a support, sometimes you think, what am I actually doing besides pressing exhaust? But it's cool if you can make such a game-impacting play. I also think in that game, it was a very important save.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of stuff people like seeing. We had a period of time where we had, like, the Karma, Janna meta, where it's like, I put my shield on my AD carry, I watch him go. Much cooler in the current meta with all the playmaking and saving that can happen.
Well, we've definitely seen a lot more Tahm Kench than we thought we would after the first kind of day. And since we had a couple of days on the Worlds patch, and as we count down towards Game 1, I also wanted to look at some more things in the meta we can break down. So let's start by taking a look at the most picked and banned champions in the play-ins. So we had 2 days of play, Aatrox, no surprise there, Urgot, and Akali, Kai'Sa, and Alistar. And yeah, this paints a wonderful picture of what we've seen.
Yeah, a lot of these were kind of expected based off what we were seeing in each individual region. The patches between them were not massive, and so you still see a lot of those kind of top lane bullies that were dominating up there, as well as the Akali, though we haven't seen too much success on her.
Yeah.
Yet. Still very high presence in terms of pick bans.
Yeah, and I think that Kai'Sa is the one that stands out to me because such a potent late game carry, but I thought that there would be ways for teams to be able to shut her down in the laning phase. That hasn't happened so far. Kai'Sa's actually been quite successful, so I want to see whether this is something that continues into the best of fives or whether if you get a couple more games against it, you can start to have some counterplay.
Akali is also very interesting. As we talked about yesterday, for instance, in Europe, it is something that if you let it through, you've made a huge mistake because most likely the enemy team is going to carry on it. Here, that hasn't necessarily been the case. Other regions seem to have different ideas about her.
Yeah, the games that we've seen go towards 1-3-1, the 1-3-1's just been very sloppy. And I think that in team fights, Akali's not going to look great, but if you isolate her in a side lane, she has so many tools to not only assassinate and push turrets, but you just can't catch her. She gets away from all of these games very quickly. So I think that we haven't seen the optimal play yet, but I think it is coming around the corner.
I think part of that also has to do with the utility mages that some people have been taking into it. We saw Galio and Zillion in the 2 games that we saw Akali, and those are things that I have my eye on as well, a couple other of these, because with Kai'Sa coming in, some of these late game carries, a lot of carry junglers and all this stuff, supportive mages in the mid lane feel like they open up your team comp so much right now. The Karma out of Detonation I thought was such a brilliant idea with a double marksman team comp, and so I really liked what I've seen out of these. They're definitely not as priority or as flashy, but I would like to see more.
Yeah, I like as well that we've seen a lot of diversity, but there's a part of me that's like, well, hell, I do also want to see like the big carry mid lane champions for some of the players that are in this tournament, and that we'll be seeing, of course, in the rest of the tournament. So how do you think this is going to evolve as we go into the rest of the tourney?
Yeah, I think it's going to be that balancing act, right? Because this does allow the Aatroxes, the Urgots to be picked up in the top lane, a little bit more of that attack-heavy threat, and also the junglers, you know, the Xin Zhao Nocturne that we've seen so far. I think that as we get a little bit more standard, see some Sejuani, Skarner, and we've already seen it through Scout and, you know, Perkz, they are going to look to pick up the big carry threats and maybe pop off for their team.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I feel like we don't see too many, like, mid-centric teams quite here. We talk about Perkz, Scout, obviously. Those guys are huge. And so I want to see when we get into the play-in stage if there's more LeBlancs, because they are so much more fun to watch. The group stage, yeah, like you were saying. They're more fun to watch when you see them getting solo kills in lane.
Yeah, and it might be I don't know, not ideal if you're a Caps or something. You're like, well, all I'm going to play is my wacky picks on which I can carry, and maybe you have to adjust. I think that's all the beauty of Worlds as well. And I think Perks yesterday learned a harsh lesson of, well, Akali's open, but maybe I don't pick it and I pick something that works better for my Urgot or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, even things like Syndra, people didn't feel comfortable. Someone, it was Detonation that blinded Karma, and then they take Syndra into it, where you take Karma into Syndra. And so it's one of those things where if you can take something that works with your team comp and throws people for a loop, I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, it's super nice to be following the meta and how it is evolving here at Plains. We'll see what the teams pick up today, as everything's going to start with Gambit looking to catch up to G2 in Group D, followed by the surprise team Detonation Focus Me versus Kaboom Esports. Now, this was 2 days ago, so just to remind everyone, G2 is the 3rd seed from the LMS. They went 2-0 on day 1, and if they win this first game versus Gambit, they get the 1st seed and nobody can touch them, so that'll be good. And then for Cloud9, Detonation Focus Me challenged them, of course, and will also be in the running to get one of those 2 seeds.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about those first 2 games as well is they also set up the tiebreakers, much like they can set up the non-tiebreakers, and then they have to play end of day. And that leads to that kind of trap game that might show up in games 5 and 6 for some of these guys as they start ramping up for their tiebreakers.
And not only that, I think the team that we expected to be challenged was G2, and we thought Cloud9 would maybe be able to cruise through their group. And kind of the flip side happened. That's, of course, only 1 day of the play-in stage. However, now on the 2nd day, do we get a little bit more normalized gameplay coming out of these teams?
I do think for the 3rd teams, KLG and Kaboom respectively, it looks very, very difficult. I don't know, although Gambit could be a bit of a coin flip today.
Gambit was weird. They definitely had a game that they lost and looked terrible in and then bounced back. And when you look at well, maybe they can actually clean that up. I think the Thresh in particular is what we looked at.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep the faith in Kaboom. I actually think that day 1 of MSI, they had similar performances where they didn't look good, especially against Oceania's Direwolves. And I think that they can pull it back. So, you know, potentially going to be some room for offsets here.
We'll see. Of course, for 1st and 2nd seed, if there are any tiebreakers, they will be played at the end of the day to make sure we have the right teams that go through. We're also going to be taking a quick break. And as we go, we'd like to take a moment to extend our condolences to our family in Latin America North, who lost Jose Cubayende Martinez, owner of Chaos Latin Gamers, earlier today. He was a pioneer and inspiration for every esports fan in Latin America, and his passion will not be forgotten.
전 세계 리그 오브 레전드 플레이어 여러분 안녕하십니까? 자, 이곳은 대한민국 서울, 서울의 롤파크입니다. 이곳에서 우리 모두가 1년 동안 기다려왔던 2018 월드 챔피언십의 그 화려한 낙이 열리게 됩니다. Are you ready?
Bottom side is going to be Team CC into the damage. That is first blood of Worlds over to Cloud9. Lambster Spike gets thrown down. It's going to be secured by Detonation Focus Me! And Kaboom gets exploded! KLG will try and fight them off, but Gambit, they really cleaned it up and they'll even things out on day number 1. Still grumpy. What a massive Dragon Soul into the last breath. He's going to get a triple knockoff. G2 will go 2-0 to kick off their world. Grab a climber. Oh, he gets ulted again, and that's Carnage to the front side.
Going Varus, going Varus. No, look at Zig.
Cloud9 to push themselves 2-0 in this group, and DFM did not make it easy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Worlds Countdown, where Spawn, Zims, and I are only 12 minutes and 30 seconds away from game number 1. And as groups C and D return to the stage, Raz wanted to give you all some additional accolades to the pros who've earned it so far.
Thank you. And I love Zims. You know, I'm going to keep using it. But you're right. For the people at home after your games, why not you go out there and give your friends some hollering? So after the games, give them the rewards. I know we already been through 2 days of MSI play-ins, so I have some awards to give out. First and foremost, leadership. Coming out of G2, Empty really had some great games. Coming into this with little experience with the squad, coming in with learning 3 languages. Remember, English, Korean, Chinese. He's able to do it all for the team, provide direction, giving his mid laner a lot of heads up, a lot of plays, and those Gragas plays, fantastic. So for me, he gets leadership for his squad, had fantastic lanes, and he was able to back him up. And for the next one, Evie for Detonation Focus Me, he gets the GG heart. Because for him, he was able to catch time and time again Blabber when he was able to pick him off with his ultimate. Incredible Urgot plays, giving them such an astronomical lead. Even though they weren't able to win the game, I felt like he was the standout performer for the squad. That being said, staying cool, staying chilled, and staying calm. The next award going straight towards Licorice because he stayed calm. In that very same game, even though the early game wasn't standing calm for him, there were some misplays happening there. Some of the team fights didn't look too good for him. What happens, he still got them the victory. His team gave him props at the end of the game because when it came to the game-ending team fight, Barons, Elder Dragons, not on their side, he's able to get the clutch ultimate for his squad to net them the win. All three players really did it for me. So that being said, why don't you go off and check out the mic check for the squad?
Hey.
Yeah, sounds good.
Are you almost 6?
Yeah, one creep.
Okay. Just play back.
Oh, he's going in on you. Oh, you might be dead. Oh, he has no mana. He's dead. Try not to die here.
I'm eating it.
Nice.
Okay, I'm gonna push. Tom's hovering.
It's gonna be a fight.
I'm here too. I'm here too.
That's
Varus TP.
Look at in.
Varus TP, guys.
I've all up. Oh, I can't ult.
We need out. Anyone that can.
I think we lost Herald.
Yeah, we did.
Can we move in?
Yeah, let's
we have
fight.
to move in.
Okay, I need a word. It's gone. Are we fighting?
Oh,
I'm TVing?
Yeah, let's look.
Yeah. They have no eat.
I'm on back.
I'm fogging for Sneaky.
I'm okay.
I'm on Urgot.
Zin's
I'm
done.
dead.
Look, Urgot.
Nice, Urgot's dead.
I'm coming.
Combos in 4.
I have a stun on him. That's all.
I'm dead.
I need to turn in 2.
Try to run. Zeke just walked in.
I'm going.
Okay.
Look here, no eat.
I did.
Varus stunned.
I got pulled.
They're fearing us all.
I'm dead.
Jensen's probably dead.
I'm out.
Wait, Jensen's in the back line.
Try to run. 2 for 2. Look at Zin here.
Yeah, we can.
Hey, look at Zin here. Don't ult him. Okay,
that's fine.
No,
That's fine.
They 6 ulted.
Oh, they're turning. We're gonna have to Lissandra all ourselves.
We're okay.
We need to help him.
I have Zonia's too.
Zonia's?
I can ult you. here.
Yeah,
I can ult you.
I'm on back.
I'm going Varus.
Varus dead.
Go. Oh, look at Zig. Nice.
Base.
Yeah, I got You guys Baron.
Yeah, go Baron.
I'm coming.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Tom, maybe?
Yeah, I'm on Tom.
Oh, look at
Tom
this.
CC'd. Look, Zig. He's stunned.
Zig's dead.
Varus dead. I'm running out.
How about Urgot?
Help back.
Nice.
Zen's respawning. I need help.
Can we end?
Push down mid.
Let's go.
Got it. I like the part where like we killed one mid and Blabber's like, can we end?
Yeah, like before the fight's even over.
I'm like, Blabber,
That was a spicy one, boys. I like that.
Let's go.
Awesome. They're really communicative, and it sounds like a good atmosphere even in the tense moments.
That's what I was going to say. If you listen to that, it doesn't actually sound like the game was out of control at any point. You're against an Elder Dragon, a Baron, they're in your base, and they're talking about, exactly how they're going to play that team fight. That's actually very impressive communication out of a young squad.
That's until they see Reaper walking up to them with that dead serious look on his face like, we got some stuff to talk about. It's great you kept your attitudes up, but you got to work better.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Reaper knows what to do in those situations. I was also very pleasantly surprised to hear afterwards and hear from a team that Licorice actually made that call. You told me, well, he was on a ward, but hey, he still made the call, Zims.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, that's what you want to see, that they're always looking for the angle. So good for them. I hope we do better.
Two people that you can't impress, apparently, Coach Reaper and Zimmy here on the desk.
No,
is not impressed by Cloud9's
No.
performance.
But maybe it's just the nickname that's putting me in the foul mood right now.
And I think also you just, as an NA expert, you want the best out of your team. So
yeah, when you want to cheer when they do well, and you always poo-poo them the most when they're struggling.
There we go. Well, we'll see later. I'm sure C9 will do wonderful, but we are just 7 minutes away from our first game of the day, which is G-Rex versus Gambit, which could decide who ends the group in first place. Actually, G-Rex, if they win, they get first place. Now, I did want to reset the conversation a bit about G-Rex. When we saw the group draw and we came into the tournament, I think a lot of people had the feeling, okay, anyone in this group could take first seed, but after what we've seen from G-Rex on day one, maybe we have to say, well, hey, this is a third seed from a major region, and we may have underestimated them a little bit.
Definitely. I think the storylines from last year where HKA failed to make it out of the play-ins was a concern. G-Rex as well, struggling in the summer split, tons of roster moves, trying to figure out how to play the meta, which a ton of teams actually struggled with in summer. So I think we might have tunneled a little too hard on some of those points because G-Rex was also the #1 seed, or one of the highest rated teams in spring split for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were first place on the ladder for majority of that split, and I think that what hurt them was the inconsistent roster, and Raz hit on it. 5 games played with Empty as their jungler, but coming into the regionals, they found that consistency, and they do seem to have carry players that they can now rally behind. It's important to note that they're also in a group with vastly inconsistent teams as well, so it's interesting to track if that changes today.
Oh, I agree, and we've actually seen a similar story with C9. Sometimes things just have to get shaken up, and then in the end, you come to the roster that works the best for you, and I think in the case of G-Rex, the fact that Empty and Candy together showed such good synergy on day one is something they'll want to replicate today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ability to play around each other. I mean, drafting the all Yasuo comp, allowing Candy easy access in. But then you have a look at what majority started those plays, and it was all the Gragas cast. Even though every single person on that team could get Candy into the fight, it was mainly Empty doing it.
Yeah, and I think especially with Candy having such a huge pool of assassins that he tends to play, I actually do like when I see him switch the other way. We saw a ton of Cassiopeia out of them in the regional qualifiers, and that's so good to see that they have these two styles and that Empty can fit into both of them as well.
And overall, I'm thrilled to see that 3rd seed from the LMS doing so well, kind of restoring a lot of the praise that region has gotten success because they've been very successful in previous years, and it wasn't just the Flash Wolves. I love that they're doing that. I hope they can keep it going, and they possibly will get a win here versus Gambit. That is at least if we go off how they beat them on day one. However, we can't count Gambit out. They're looking to prove themselves after that loss, and when I look at the last year and a half and the international trajectory for Gambit, Worlds last year didn't get any wins. At MSI, they got a lot of group stage wins, but faltered in the best of 5, so I'm really looking for growth from this team. What have you guys seen so far?
Well, at MSI, they had a fantastic read on the meta, and they were able to innovate and bring things that other teams weren't expected. I think this has been like the complete opposite. I think they're actually a little bit far behind. They're not even really standard. They're like a month ago standard, maybe when their season ends, and it's just not looking clean from that stage.
Yeah, I mean, what they did against KLG, where they left up all those power picks and just took like almost 100% comfort into it, they did a great job exploiting it. The draft out of KLG with some of the pieces that fit in around those power picks were not ideal, but that's not the kind of thing that you can kind of keep doing long term, where you're just leaving up Urgot, accolades, and all these other picks.
They're also learning some lessons about their crew. It looks like, Edward went for that Thresh, something he was famously known for before. We don't want to see it necessarily. It could have been an off day, but he did better on something that was a bit more forgiving.
Yeah, I mean, that was like you're missing the Q key completely. I don't remember seeing a single one of those hooks lands, which is kind of one of the most important buttons on Thresh.
Yeah, so we'll see how he does today. So win conditions for both teams. Let's start with G-Rex. They are the favorites in this one after what we saw of day one. So how do they keep it going?
All right, so for me, I want to see a higher tempo jungler, kind of like what they did in their first victory over Gambit, where they had the Skarner pick, whether that's Talia, Skarner, Olaf, something that's going to allow them to get the early jump on it and control Diamond, who is kind of their early game playmaker. I like getting something lane dominant in the bot lane. Varus is the one that I really hope they go for, but I'm concerned if they give up a Lucian or something, because Logic is really, really good, and I did not really love the Tristana pick before, so I don't want G-Rex to end up in a losing bot lane matchup. Better Drake control, because they were smashing that game and somehow Gambit was still walking away from those Drakes. So if you're controlling the jungler and you have a good bot lane, make sure you're actually turning that into Drake control. And then finally, I really like Candy on Assassins, but I don't want them to brute force it and just kind of power pick something that can easily get countered. So if you do see the mid pick come out of Gambit a little bit earlier on, you have the chance to take a nice Assassin matchup, go for it.
Wow, it feels like they have a lot of options. So for Gambit as the underdog, how many options do they have?
Yeah, I think they have a couple as well, because watching their Game 2 performance, it was much better. And let's start there. Logic was a consistent member across both games. And I think this is a guy that, even though he's the youngest, newest member on the team, you can rely on to carry late game situations. And that's great, because it means you don't necessarily have to force plays. And I think that's the next point. Edward, stop trying to force plays. Get rid of the Thresh. He played Alistar the next game, went 2-1-8, was involved in 10 out of 13 of the kills. If you get him into the team fight situations, the veterancy will take over. You don't have to smash that bottom lane. And once again, keep up the meta, go with the aggressive jungler. The Talia pick was massive for Diamond. Get him on something that is tempo, getting on something that can impact lanes early, especially around Kira. I think that 2v2 is key to unlock.
I think it's pretty interesting that we both have pretty similar win conditions around Logic and Diamond Proc.
Yeah.
Both of us wanting to see more out of them, or in my case, wanting to continue controlling them a little bit better. So I really do think those are kind of the focal points for Gambit.
They absolutely are. Absolutely huge matchup. It would be huge if G-Rex can lock in that first seed, knowing who they might then avoid going into the best of 5. So let's check out our predictions for going into the day. I don't think they'll be... Oh, there we go.
There we go. We got some.
Wait, I am surprised that I put my faith in Detonation Focus Me after day 1 of Kaboom, but the Kaboom resurgence is anticipated here.
Yeah, what's going on? I knew Spawn was already going for the upset in Gambit game 1. I was almost on board with that.
I actually watched the game again before we came on, and it took 37 minutes to close, and that was a disaster of an early game. They had 3 losing lanes, and as you said, someone that wasn't in form, and Edward is an emotional player, and he was clearly not happy with how that early game went and continued to try and force. I actually think if the early game goes like a little bit better, they win a lot of those team fights. And with some tweaks in the draft that we saw actually against KLG, I have a lot of faith that this Gambit lineup can bring it back.
I 100%
You're convincing me.
I 100% agree. I just didn't quite take the jump to do it because I also saw a lot of things that G-Rex could have done better too. They could have been a lot better closing out that game with the lead that they had built.
I've also been to a lot of these international tournaments where day 1 and day 2 in groups just looks completely different.
So different.
Also trying to go on the kind of meta read on the world stage to see if that could happen again.
Well, hopefully for Gambit, it looks different than it did on day 1, because that wasn't too good versus G-Rex. Let's see if they can pull it back. It is time to kick